It was reported that he died from heart disease shortly after his wife succumbed to a rare infectious disease. The world was stunned when Hollywood legend Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were found dead at their Santa Fe home, just weeks apart. However, as the police dug deeper into the case, unsettling clues started to surface, indicating that someone might have known about their deaths before they were discovered. It was reported that he died from heart disease after his wife passed away from a rare infectious disease. The world was stunned when Hollywood icon Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa were found dead at their home in Santa Fe, just weeks apart. As the police delved deeper into the investigation, strange signs began to emerge, suggesting that someone might have known about their deaths before they were discovered. Layla Ann is now at the center of attention, but what's being uncovered is far worse than anyone anticipated. What has she been hiding, and how far will she go to keep the truth concealed? The answers might just shock you. The shocking deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife were discovered inside their home in Santa Fe on Wednesday, after a concerned neighbor called the police. The house was eerily quiet, with the door slightly ajar. Mail had been left outside for weeks, untouched. Someone in the neighborhood sensed something was amiss and called the authorities. Officers arrived to check on the well-being of one individual, expecting to find nothing out of the ordinary. Inside, the scene was incredibly strange. Gene Hackman's body was discovered near the kitchen, slumped in an unnatural position. He hadn't touched the sunglasses that lay beside him, as though they had simply fallen from his hands. Betsy Arakawa's body was found in the bathroom, with medications scattered across the counter. The sink had dried, leaving a thin film behind. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and no visible breakage. Just an unsettling, quiet scene that raised more questions than answers. Two healthy dogs were seen running around the house, while one lay dead in a problematic crate. The bodies of the deceased dogs were not fresh. The skin had clung to the bones, and the decomposition had slowed, suggesting that time had passed. It was clear that embalming would soon be necessary. The police discovered that Gene and Betsy had been dead for weeks. The air inside the house was stale, untouched for a long time. Food sat abandoned on the counter, long past its expiration, giving the eerie feeling that time had simply stopped in that house. The police had one chilling question to ask. How could two people, one of whom was a Hollywood star, have evaded detection for such a long time? The answer came from something strange. Gene Hackman's pacemaker recorded the final action it performed, and this critical piece of information was closely examined by investigators, revealing a new layer to the mystery. It seemed that Gene may have passed away on February 17th. If that were true, the house had been silent for at least 9 days, with no emergency calls, no activity, and no one entering the house. However, there was still something off. Why was Betsy found in a different room? If Gene had been unconscious, why didn't she call for help? And if she had still been alive after his death, the list of unanswered questions only grew longer. There was a small gap in the door, and it became clear that someone had been there before the police arrived. Had the door been intentionally opened? The lab report showed no signs of carbon monoxide poisoning or an overdose. There was no obvious cause of death, and the scene seemed eerily calm. Just as the investigation appeared to hit a dead end, something new was discovered, an unexpected clue that sent the case in a completely different direction. The new finding would change everything, opening doors to unsettling possibilities that hadn't been considered before. Their records revealed that Gene Hackman's house had been under surveillance. Someone had been monitoring the property for weeks before his death. Motion was recorded by the security cameras, and strange events were logged on the phone. GPS tracking data showed unusual patterns leading up to the police's arrival. It seemed that someone knew what had happened. As the investigation deepened, the digital trail led straight to an unexpected person, Gene Hackman's daughter. This startling discovery raised even more questions, casting suspicion on a family member who had remained out of the public eye until now. The investigation quickly shifted its focus. The evidence didn't match what Gene Hackman's daughter had claimed. She said she had spoken to her father just weeks before his death, but call records didn't align with that story. Financial activities also raised red flags. As the investigators dug deeper, they uncovered something even stranger. Documents related to Gene's estate had been altered before his death was even confirmed. Someone had tried to take control of his assets before the authorities had even been alerted to his passing. This discovery pointed to a deeper, more complicated mystery, suggesting that his death might have been only part of a much larger scheme. There is strong evidence suggesting that things were not going well with the case. Was Gene Hackman's death truly an accident, or had someone been planning something dark long before he was found? The 24-hour surveillance program on the timeline of his death, when the police reviewed Gene Hackman's pacemaker data, marked a major turning point in the case before it quieted down. The device recorded a final movement, clearly from the heartbeat sensor, when everything suddenly stopped. That was the moment everything changed. Investigators began to search for any signs of life after that day. They examined his phone records. No calls, no texts, no web searches. His financial activity had ceased. No bank logins, no credit card purchases. It was as if he had simply vanished. This absence of activity raised even more questions, leading the investigators to wonder if someone had been involved in making his disappearance appear as if he had just disappeared without a trace. Then, something else surfaced. A security camera from a nearby property had picked up movement outside Hackman's house. A shadow was seen near the door, and a car had been parked on the street for hours, seemingly waiting. Inside the house, motion sensors also detected unusual behavior, movements that didn't match the timeline of events. These strange signs pointed to the possibility that someone had been there before the police arrived, raising the unsettling question of who had been watching and what they had been waiting for. At times, the front door remained closed, despite witnesses claiming to have seen it open. But where were those people? The police reviewed Hackman's home security system, and the logs revealed something was wrong long before his death. The doorbell had been turned off and on multiple times, with no break-ins or emergency calls, yet something felt off. Every day, Hackman followed the same routine, walking his dog at the same time each morning, checking his mail, and paying his bills. His life was predictable, almost too easy to plan. Then, suddenly, nothing. There were no more signs of activity, no patterns, just an eerie silence. Something didn't add up. The police dug deeper and found his last digital traces, his final text, his last web search, and his most recent call to someone. Each call ended quickly, with no warning, no goodbyes. Then, another clue appeared. Mobile tower data showed a strange phone signal near Hackman's house. The phone number wasn't registered, as it bounced between hidden towers, making it hard to trace where it truly came from. The signal appeared the night before his heart monitor recorded its final beat. Someone was there. Someone knew what had happened. Betsy should have called for help if Hackman had health issues, but there were no calls. Why didn't she leave the house if she was still alive after he died? Why didn't she tell anyone? The police reviewed her bank records from February 16th, and there was only one small transaction. It seemed insignificant at the time, but now it appears as just a digital footprint, a faint sign of life before everything went dark that day. Both Hackman and his wife passed away, but the real question remains: who had been watching them? Although the detectives were initially focused on someone who could have entered the house to steal something, they soon shifted their attention. The tracking records raised new questions, prompting them to seek the truth behind what had been hidden. The involvement of his daughter, Leslie Ann Hackman, was now under scrutiny. At first, the focus had been on the strange timeline, the surveillance video, and the data from the heart monitor. But as the investigation progressed, they uncovered something that would change the entire course of the case, revealing deeper layers that no one had anticipated. The police stated that the last time Leslie Ann Hackman spoke to her father was weeks before his death. Everything seemed fine, with no signs of concern or strange behavior. But when the police reviewed the call logs, they found no calls, texts, or any other communication. The last time she was seen or spoke to her father was much earlier than she had claimed. The timeline didn't align with her story. Investigators also examined her bank records, expecting to find normal business transactions and typical spending habits. Instead, they discovered something much more unsettling. She had been discussing her father's fortune in recent conversations, raising further suspicions about her involvement in the events surrounding his death. It was officially announced that Gene Hackman had passed away, but many questions remained regarding the legal aspects and inheritance rights. At a time when no one outside the family believed Hackman had died, documents related to his estate were altered. The timing of these changes, coupled with the key events surrounding them, raised serious concerns that the police could not ignore. If these alterations were made before February 17th, they could have been planned well in advance. The government began asking tough questions, particularly about whether his daughter, Leslie Ann Hackman, had any knowledge of or involvement in the changes made to her father's estate. The daughter, when confronted with contradictions in her testimony, became defensive. She couldn't explain why there were no records of the calls she claimed to have made. Moreover, she couldn't account for the financial transactions linked to her name. Another unsettling discovery was that Hackman's estate had been discussed with a lawyer at the exact time his pacemaker recorded its final movement. Yet no one had publicly acknowledged his death at that moment. What do you think about the contradictions in her testimony and the strange financial transactions linked to Hackman's daughter? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more captivating cases ahead. As the events grew more bizarre, the police not only investigated Hackman's death, but also uncovered signs of potential financial fraud. Each new discovery pointed to deception, making it clear that this was no mere accident. Investigators began to see the pieces of the puzzle fitting together, and with each passing day, time was running out. Everything was on the verge of a major shift when a secret, one that could change the entire course of the case, was about to be revealed. When the autopsy report came back, the police remained tight-lipped, offering no answers to the growing questions but instead providing additional details about the condition of Hackman and Betsy Arakawa's bodies. Hackman's body showed no signs of injury, no swelling, broken bones, or scars. Similarly, Betsy's body revealed no signs of a struggle or criminal activity. Initially, the theory that they had been poisoned by carbon monoxide was ruled out, as no evidence of gas leaks or any other potential causes of death. Toxicology reports confirmed that neither Hackman nor Betsy Arakawa had been poisoned or overdosed. However, the police noticed the absence of several crucial medications that Hackman needed due to his previous heart issues. Hackman had undergone medical procedures and required specific medication to manage his condition, but those prescriptions were nowhere to be found during the search of the house.
This wasn't just a case of missing medication bottles. It hinted at the possibility that he had run out of medication or that someone had intervened in controlling his medication, adding a new layer of suspicion to the case. Hackman's medication should have shown evidence that he had taken more, but there were no pills to be found. There should have been extra medication in the house if he had stopped taking them, yet none remained. It seemed as though the medication had been deliberately removed. Investigators began to entertain a chilling possibility. What if Hackman's death wasn't caused by something external, but by something far more covert? Perhaps someone had ensured that he never received the medical help he needed. Whether through intentional attack or careless neglect, the consequences could have been fatal. The autopsy report suggested that Hackman's death could have resulted from someone stopping him from taking his medication, halting his medical treatment, or allowing his condition to worsen without any intervention. It wasn't the result of a violent struggle or a sudden shock. It appeared to be a slow, inevitable decline. Authorities then turned their attention to the pills found around Betsy. Why hadn't she taken them if she was in pain? Why didn't she call for help? Perhaps she wasn't strong enough to do anything, or maybe something or someone made sure she couldn't act, adding yet another layer of mystery to the case. Everything shifted when the medication went missing, revealing a clear intention. It suggested that the deaths were not accidental, but part of a carefully planned action. The police were no longer just investigating a tragic death. The cause of death was still undetermined. In a further twist, the couple's German Shepherd was found dead in a bin in the bathroom, adding to the suspicion. Investigators began to consider the possibility that this was all part of a well-thought-out plan, one orchestrated by someone who stood to gain everything by taking ownership of the property. The litigation began almost immediately, and the battle for Gene Hackman's estate was underway. His wealth, accumulated over decades of success in Hollywood, was now caught up in a web of lawsuits. Even before his death, investigators had uncovered suspicious activity surrounding his assets. However, when they reviewed his will, they were truly shocked. There were blank pages, and crucial information had been altered before Hackman was officially declared dead. It was clear someone had tampered with the documents, and it wasn't long before Leslie Ann Hackman's name appeared throughout the records. She had been suspiciously curious about her father's wealth long before his body was discovered. Her lawyer even admitted that she had attempted to alter the inheritance, deepening the suspicion surrounding her involvement in the entire situation. The documents revealed something Leslie Ann Hackman wasn't supposed to have done. The papers and transactions suggested that someone had been preparing for the transfer of assets well in advance. A will had been drawn up, reviewed, altered, and sent to a lawyer for consideration, all while Hackman was still missing. It was evident that Leslie Ann was involved, but the question remained, Were they clever, or did she already know her father was dead? Legal experts disagreed on the changes. Some believed the alterations were made to secure a larger portion of the inheritance, while others suspected widespread fraud. The true motive behind the tampered documents remained unclear, but the investigation was only just beginning to unravel the tangled web of deception. If Leslie Ann had been preparing for her father's death, what else had she been preparing for? The legal battle intensified as missing pages were discovered, and financial issues along with inheritance claims were brought to light at the most inconvenient time. Prosecutors began to build a case, following a clear trail of money that seemed to lead straight to Leslie Ann. This wasn't just a matter of estate rights, it was about lies, greed, and how far someone would go to claim wealth. As the case moved to court, Leslie Ann Hackman was about to face a verdict she never saw coming. Leslie Ann Hackman's suspicious behavior raised troubling questions, prompting authorities to escalate their investigation. With 24-hour surveillance in place, they uncovered unsettling truths. Current research was primarily focused on Leslie Ann, as too many red flags had been raised by her involvement in the real estate battle. The police were determined to get to the bottom of it, so they kept a constant watch on her, tracking every move, every phone call, email, and financial transaction. What they found made them feel sick, uncovering details that pointed to a much darker reality than anyone had anticipated. Her bank records told a story that Leslie Ann had never shared with anyone, revealing alarming patterns in her transactions. Cash had been transferred to various banks, and there were withdrawals in such small amounts that they were difficult to trace. These changes appeared to have been made at an unusually odd time, some even occurring before Gene Hackman was believed to be dead. Investigators also delved into her private emails, uncovering messages sent to the lawyer that suggested something deeply unsettling. Leslie Ann had previously mentioned her father's estate, and it seemed as though there was a clear motive for the public to be made aware of it. On paper, her father was still alive when she spoke to the lawyer about estate claims, almost as if she had been preparing for something she knew was about to happen. Even more disturbing information came to light through phone records. The timeline revealed that Leslie Ann had been in contact with financial experts, transferring assets, and pushing legal proceedings while everyone still believed Gene Hackman was alive. Her actions only made sense if she was certain her father was no longer involved. The bank payments with no recorded footage were among the most incriminating pieces of evidence. A forensic audit revealed that a large sum of money had been quietly transferred into personal accounts. Some of these transactions had been routed to foreign banks, making them harder to trace and adding another layer of complexity to the investigation. Leslie Ann had been transferring money long before she was allowed access to those funds. At this point, it's no longer just speculation. Evidence from surveillance activity, financial records, and legal investigations all point to the same conclusion. This is not just a daughter dealing with her own pain and managing her father's business. This is a carefully planned scheme to make money. The verdict is undeniable. Evidence indicated that someone had been deeply involved in manipulating bank records, altering legal documents, and using surveillance footage to cover up their actions before Gene Hackman was officially declared dead. Leslie Ann Hackman had meticulously planned to profit from her father's estate. The investigation revealed a clear pattern of lying, fraud, and obstruction, and it was time for justice to be served. The police were called, and she was arrested, charged, and immediately jailed. Prosecutors wasted no time moving forward with the case. It quickly progressed through the court system like a carefully crafted puzzle. each piece revealing how Leslie Ann had attempted to deceive the system for her own gain. The missing pages from the will, the altered land ownership documents, and the unseen transactions all painted a clear picture. The timeline revealed that Leslie Ann had been preparing for Gene Hackman's death long before anyone knew he was gone. The decision was swift and decisive. As a result of the verdict, she lost all rights to Hackman's estate. She was convicted on multiple charges: theft, financial manipulation, and obstruction of justice. Every dollar, every asset, and every official connection to her father was wiped clean. Her name was permanently removed from the inheritance, and any claim to his fortune was erased for good. She had set everything up, crafted her plan, but in the end, it all crumbled right before her eyes. Now there was nothing left. No money, no claim to her father's estate. Goodbye. Forever. Yet even after the verdict was delivered, lingering questions remained. What truly happened in the final days of Gene Hackman's life? Leslie Ann had simply taken advantage of the opportunity, but some believed the full story had yet to come to light. The truth behind Gene Hackman's final days may never be fully known, leaving a cloud of mystery that may never be fully unraveled. What do you think really happened to Hackman's massive fortune? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click on the next video that pops up on your screen.